herzlich willkommen zu einer weiteren Folge vom Podcast Jugendlicher Leichtsinn. Heute mit meiner reizenden Freundin und Mitbewohnerin Madeline Kane. Madeline Kane, ich grüße dich.
Ich grüße dich auch.
Dadurch, dass wir immer auf Englisch miteinander reden und wir auch hier einen gewissen Flow haben wollen, werden wir auch dieses Gespräch auf Englisch aufnehmen.
Cool.
So I'm happy for all of you who love listening to English, and for those who are not one of those, well, fair enough. Okay, so today's topic is beauty ideals. And first of all, I'd say let's start with you, Madeline. How are you today?
I'm doing great, thank you. I feel beautiful.
Great. In fact, I feel beautiful too today.
That's wonderful.
Sometimes you look into the mirror and you're happy with it, and other days you're not.
Mm-hmm.
So I looked up a definition on Wikipedia.
Mm-hmm.
However, I chose the German because the German Wikipedia site focuses on beauty ideals in general. The English redirects you automatically to the female beauty ideal.
Interesting.
So what I found out is a beauty ideal is an ideal, a contemporary concept of beauty within a culture. You being from the US, me being from Germany, both of us, we live here in Germany. So I guess what we will talk about today is mostly going to revolve around Western culture beauty ideals.
Right.
So also what I found out is that it is usually associated with the body and the face. And to start off with, what does it mean to you, that topic? Very general.
Generally, I would say beauty ideals have been a big topic in my life as a performer because it's something that always comes up. I'm an opera singer, and the importance of meeting the beauty standard has become very clear to me as a part of my success and or lack thereof. And also as just a woman and a person, I've felt a lot of pressure in my entire life to meet a beauty standard that I feel is unfair, unrealistic, and sexist and just gross. So that's what comes up for me when I think beauty ideals. I think like puke, like gross, the worst, that there is an ideal and that there has to be a certain way to be beautiful. I'd really like to see the people in my life and my culture lean towards a more open concept of all things potentially being beautiful, and or the other side of that is that beauty ceases to be something that we focus so strongly on.
Okay, so the beauty ideals have been changing in the past.
Yes.
So
absolutely. Mm-hmm.
So especially, interestingly enough, mostly for women. So sometimes thin women were perceived at something to aspire to, especially nowadays, but that has not always been the case.
Correct, yeah.
So do you see the beauty ideal changing right now, or is it stagnating?
It's not stagnating. It's absolutely always in flux, and that's a part of what we see in the media and what we're being fed. I believe that's what changes it. If I can go far back in history, I would say that what most scientists would say, and what I've generally collected from my reading, is that to have a body that has more fat on it was considered more attractive in a woman.
That's true. Because
it's more likely that you can be fertile, raise a child, and not starve. So we as humans have for many, many millennia gravitated towards preferring women who have more fat on their bodies.
Yeah.
But that's something that changed slowly, but also in Western culture most dramatically at the beginning of the 20th century, when women were expected to be more slender and boyish. In the Roaring 20s age, for example, in the US, this became sort of the first really large turn towards a thin ideal. So if we're just talking about weight strictly, that's when that started to change quite a bit, and we've had different levels of expectation about thinness throughout the 20th century, and that has changed as well. The boyish figure of the 20s gave way to a curvy figure in the 1950s. Still, thin was good. Being trim and not too fat was good, but an hourglass figure is preferred. Then we have Twiggy, the model in the 60s in the US, who was ultra thin, very, very slender woman.
Didn't she have anorexia?
That's a good question. I actually don't know anything about her personal life. I know that it's possible to be very thin and be very healthy. And so, of course, it's possible that she was having a healthy life, and it's possible she was not eating enough or not nourishing herself. And I really don't know, actually. I haven't researched her. But I know that she was a symbol. She was used as a symbol to sort of standardize this very thin beauty ideal. And I would say, actually, now the beauty standard is, again, tending towards a more curvy body type. Still, we don't prefer fat women in the media, but there's another resurgence of sort of an interest in bigger hips and not quite this stick thin beauty. But it's so wild because imagine you have one kind of body and you're being told to just have another body. It's almost impossible to really change what you look like. You can do some things, and you can starve yourself, and you can do exercise, and you can, I don't know, do squats to have a better butt. But your body is your body, and the shape it has is mostly determined by genes. Where you're born, what kind of access you have to healthcare, this kind of thing is mostly what determines how you look. And just this bullshit that we get sold that you can change what you look like is really hurtful.
At the same time, it has always been tried by humanity to change, even though it is not possible. So if you take the example of makeup, so even in ancient Egypt, people have found out that they used some sort of colors to paint their faces.
Yeah.
That's what it is. And even later, in Baroque times, I think,
Absolutely.
or Rococo, even men then started painting their faces / makeup, right? So there is apparently some sort of strong interest in altering your appearance.
Absolutely, yeah. We've done everything we can to make ourselves look different and also look more attractive to the opposite sex for those who are straight. And yeah, gay people don't get a whole lot of traction in history most of the time. They had to live in hiding, but they're there too, and also changing their appearances to attract their partners, people of all orientations. I would say it's really interesting that you brought up the idea of men putting on makeup, because that's an idea that comes around this Baroque and Rococo time in France in particular, that men are wearing high-heeled shoes, men are wearing wigs as well as women are wearing wigs.
Long hair too.
Very long hair with curls, very very elegant and feminine styling. And that's kind of a time when we saw men almost being held to the same standards as women for beauty. And that's not something that we've seen in most cultures and most societies. In my experience, I'm not a historian on beauty. I'm not an expert, but I think this subject's really interesting. So I do like to take it in when I find it in the internet or through people that I follow. And so, what I've noticed is, for example, today, the standards for women in beauty are just so much higher, and the effort and the money that's expected out of women, the input that we're expected to put into our beauty, it's just a lot higher than what it is for men. So, and that's I would say, like, through my experience of Western history, that's mostly the case. That men may have some. We also have beauty standards for men that have to do with strength, that have to do with size, that have to do with shape of the body. But overall, we haven't created men in the image of, like, men have not become a beauty object. Women have existed for so long to only be looked at, that is the perspective of so many people for so long, that we exist to be looked at. And if you're not nice to look at, you need to hide yourself.
Yeah, I agree that beauty is mostly attributed to women. There are, of course, also beautiful men, but men have never been as strongly idealized as beauty objects, as you said, more like maybe strength or being a hero, whatever, like this war kind of thing.
But again, those things associate themselves to other qualities that have nothing to do with how you look.
There you go.
The strength is all about what you can do, and the hero is all about your role and your position and your power. So that's, of course, it's a whole other burden that men have to bear to fulfill that and to somehow be somebody that they're not, or try to be somebody that they're not. It's not okay, but it's not the same as the beauty standard for women.
Even though in ancient Greek, there you have all the statues of like having a healthy spirit in a healthy body, which at that time was idealized, having a lot of muscles. But that, of course, has changed dramatically. So nowadays, if you're a man and you have, let's say, for example, if you're financially stable, very stable, that's just a claim right now, attract enough people to mate. Right?
Yeah. As a man, you have a lot of options in terms of how you can attract a mate, right? You can have money, you can be funny, you can be simply successful in your career even without having a lot of money. You can be strong even without being attractive. There are a lot of different ways to fulfill masculine ideals without fulfilling masculine beauty ideals as a man. Whereas as a woman, I often see that we only think first about a woman's beauty and then about what else she can do. Even within my own experience and my own friends and my own life, I notice so much more that the women in my life are being told first that they're beautiful, and second, oh, and you're so talented, or oh, and you're so successful, and if they're being praised, it's for their beauty first.
That's also what you learn to express compliments that refer to beauty or even beauty standards.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So what would you say to you? What is the current beauty ideal of a woman? Like could you describe it?
Yeah, so today in the Western world, I would say the beauty ideal of a woman is quite thin, probably not too short. We're also not very interested in short women these days, so relatively tall with long legs, round hips and a round butt, a flat stomach, and now the beauty standard has tended a little bit more towards like smaller breasts, which is very interesting. I don't know why these things happen. Like in the 90s, the big breasts that you saw on Baywatch and this kind of stuff was completely a different look than what we see now, and we see a lot less breast implants happening throughout the world. So smaller breasts are in, small breasts are in and big butts are in. I would say also, of course, whiteness is the root of all of this. So white women are preferred, women of color are not preferred. White hair texture, so like a straight or wavy hair texture is preferred. Black and kinky hair is not preferred. Hairlessness on the body is preferred. Body hair is completely unacceptable. And
again, there's a difference, right? I mean, of course, you're describing the female body now, but it just comes to my mind. It's so straight. Like it's completely arbitrary. There's no logic behind it.
Right.
Like for men, you can have hair. Like
correct.
It's all right.
But you can also have no hair, and it's great as a man. If a man is hairless, or if a man has a lot of hair, maybe for like Hollywood standards, we have a certain like perfect amount of body hair or something that we want. But overall, throughout the world, an attractive man can have a lot of hair or none. And the women I know prefer different kinds of characteristics in terms of hair in a man, whereas very, very rarely encountered men who say, oh, I really love a woman who has a lot of hair in her arms. I mean, this or a girl with a little 5 o'clock shadow, nothing like it, except of course women across the world have facial hair, have chest hair, have nipple hair, have ass hair, back hair. Women have hair on their bodies. This is a thing.
Yeah, for everybody out there, it's a thing.
It's a thing. We have it. Most women are spending time every week / every day to get rid of that hair so you won't see it. Now we're in a corona quarantine. I have to say I've been letting my leg hair grow really long. That's fun, But it's amazing how even though I've worked so hard to get past these externalized pressures of being beautiful for other people's sake, I've really fought against that and done a lot of work in my own mind to free myself from that. And still, I find that when spring comes and I'm showing my legs, I want to shave my legs, not really for me, but for others, and just to escape this embarrassment or somehow potential judgment.
Yeah,
exactly. So I feel happy right now that I'm escaping the eyes of the world a little bit in my house. It's interesting.
Yeah, so that leads me actually to the next subtopic, which is like pressure, expectations, stress.
Yeah.
Also as you said, going out, like / being social, being among other people, meeting their expectations, which you might have never heard explicitly, but you know that they're there because we've all grown up in the same culture, have seen the same movies.
Such a good point. There's so many things that are unsaid that are like written in stone, but no one has ever spoken them aloud. And as a young girl, I understood a lot of things about beauty culture without anyone ever telling me, and also without anyone in my family even reinforcing them in any direct way. But I was chubby as a kid from like before puberty, and then through my teenage years became, I would say, like fat. And it was so obvious to me that this was not okay, and that if I wanted to find love and have a partner later in life, that this would just not work, that you can't be fat and have a good partner, and you can't be loved. And yet...
That's pretty strong.
But nobody ever said that to me out loud. Nobody ever teased me directly about being fat. When it would come up with my friends, they would say, "Oh, but you're so pretty," or kind of try to, discount this like weight thing. They wanted to, shield me from the pain that I was clearly feeling, and they had so much sympathy for me. And I think also the way friends see friends. I mean, I always found my friends beautiful. I think they also found me beautiful. It's a part of like this girl friend love, which is so nice. But I didn't believe them, and I felt that that I wasn't worthy of romantic love because of my body. So that's something that no one told me, but that I understood very, very clearly. And it was also very clear from the way boys would treat me, that it could never be even a thought in their mind that they would find me attractive. Because I was fat, I was immediately discounted. And that was my experience in college as well. And I found it, to be a huge pressure on my mind, and something that I felt obsessed with the thought of. And I spent a lot of energy and time and money doing diets so that I would fit into the beauty standard. And I was quote unquote successful. I lost weight and then got a lot of attention and felt validated and attractive. And I noticed, especially after one particular diet where I lost a lot of weight really quickly in a very unhealthy way, that men treated me differently immediately when I reached a certain sort of look. There was a certain look that needed to be achieved before I could get more attention. And so that also reinforced my ideas around, okay, thin is good, clearly, because I have proof. And I would gain weight then again, and also see the proof that I would be treated differently. So it's been really interesting to have direct personal experience with my own weight and my own body, and see how people react to me differently. And these are all things, again, it's easy to think that you're the only one who sees it, or you're the only one who feels that way. But now as I'm older and I talk more and more, not only to fat women, but also to all women who experience different kinds of issues with their body image or with their beauty standard, their inability to perfectly fulfill this beauty standard, which it's basically not reachable for almost anyone. We can talk to each other about our experiences and normalize all of these negative thoughts, the fact that they exist, and the fact that we have had these experiences. So now I see it as something that is, of course I reacted this way, and of course I was treated this way. It's not about me, it's about an entire system which expects something that just can't be. So, yeah.
So nowadays, of course, a lot of attention has shifted online.
Yeah.
So you you get feedback online. And what I'm trying to hint at is, of course, likes, right? So what role of social media do you see when it comes to this? How can you benefit from it, and what have you seen as a threat?
Yeah, social media is a two-edged sword in some ways. Is that the right metaphor for that? What I mean to say is it has upsides and downsides. So that's not a two-edged sword. That's something else.
Right. I was just about to bring it up.
Yeah, just correct me right there. I would say that social media has been a wonderful thing in my recovery from the obsession of trying to be thin and beauty ideals, and also has been something that really pisses me off and reinforces those same beauty ideals that I'm trying to get away from. So when I was younger and Facebook was kind of our only social media, I was definitely focused on posting pictures that made me look beautiful and thinner than I am from certain angles, and spent a lot of time sort of curating specific photos. And now social media has grown to be a bit more broad and different platforms. I'm personally only on Instagram and Facebook, really. Those are my two. And I find Instagram to sometimes be the same, that I can get caught up in posting a picture that's beautiful so that I will get attention and get likes and have all my friends say, "You're so beautiful." But I also find that my experience of Instagram has also been that it's highly curatable, and that I took it upon myself to change the conversation for myself, and that beauty can be about anything that I find beautiful. And so, taking the focus off of myself, I started to follow a lot of accounts of people who have expressed their beauty in a way that contradicts the beauty standard. So people who are super fat, for example, people who are trans and are not attempting to hide every single body hair or facet of their body, which may betray that they are trans, which might give them away, for example.
So how do you understand beauty in those cases?
I understand beauty to be something that I like to look at, and that is visually appealing or engaging, or that captures my eye, that looks like art. And I think humans are beautiful works of art. And my artistic eye has opened from only one style of beauty being the thing that I can see to a lot of different kinds. And now I'll follow some. There's a photographer I really like on Instagram. The handle is Shuglet, and I believe that person is non-binary. They take photographs of super fat people, and they're amazing photographic effects that they will compare, for example, like the ripples of water with the ripples of like body, like the rolls on a stomach, or like the cellulite on like a thigh, that looks like the most stunning work of art that you've ever seen. And you start to see it truly differently, because of course my whole life, if I ever saw a really, really fat person in public showing a lot of skin, I was disgusted. And isn't that awful? But I was. And my second thought then would be, I'm so afraid that I'm going to look like that one day, that will be me. I had a deathly fear of becoming super fat. And so I felt repulsed by those people's bodies when I would see them, maybe at the beach, or on a hot day, seeing a person with a lot of their skin out. And now to see it in a totally different context, it has really changed my mind. It has reprogrammed me. I feel like I needed, like our friend Lauren will say, like, you know, people who are racist, bigots, whatever, they need a system update, just update that operating system, you know? I feel like I updated my operating system, and now I can see what's really in front of me, which is a body and a look of skin and a texture and a curve and a shape, and just something that I can like to look at. And so that has then also started to affect how I see myself.
So what you're saying is you are using and have been using Instagram in order to update your system, in order to relearn what beauty means, or what beauty also can mean, apart from what we consider to be the single truth.
Correct. And I've also found that I personally don't see the beauty as much in people who have, we've all been told that they fit the beauty ideal perfectly, some model or whatever, a woman who might be in this quote unquote ideal body, in a bathing suit, you know, with really great hair and whatever. And sometimes I'll look at a woman like that and think, oh, well, there's nothing in particular about this person that really captures me. And so I'll think, yeah, not so beautiful to me. It's okay. I'm not saying that's a bad person, or she's ugly, or she's less deserving of respect or love, but it's like a boring piece of art to me that I can kind of walk by because I've seen it.
Yeah.
And so I find that I'm kind of more interested in someone who has more attributes that vary from the beauty standard, because I find that more exciting to look at.
So would you say you have moved away from the mainstream beauty ideal towards another, let's say, subculture, let's call it that, of people who consider beauty differently? Or would you say you're like highly individual, and what you consider to be beautiful is really only what you consider? / is there a crowd that shares your mind?
I think there are people who share my mind. I think also every person has their own individual taste, and I definitely have my favorites, my favorite qualities. My boyfriend, for example, has really beautiful, dark, thick hair, and I just love that on any person, on a woman, on a man. I think that like really dark and thick hair is just so attractive. So that's always something that I've liked. But so I have my own preferences, but I see beauty in a more liberated way, and that is a movement which is happening now, which is something that is being supported by people who are trans and non-binary, people who are fat, people who are disabled, people of color who are also sick of the racism which is included in the beauty standard.
What do you mean by that?
So for that, I would have to also go back a little bit into history. The origins of all of this obsession with thinness, according to a couple of people that I've listened to on podcasts and who have written books about this topic, who I can't quote right now, but I know this to be true, that what we see is that white people during this colonial and a time of a lot of people of color mixing into Western culture, more immigrants, more slaves, et cetera, white people started to need to establish the hierarchy once again, and to say, not only are we better than Black people or people of color, but why are we better than them? Let's look for some concrete reasons. And you have eugenicists and people who are white supremacist scientists looking to the characteristics of Black folks and other people of color from different parts of the world, and comparing them physically to white people unfavorably, and saying, well, Black people are fat and white people are thin, and look at this beautiful white woman, she's so thin. This is what we want. This is the beauty ideal. And so actually the obsession with thinness comes from this white supremacist idea that white is the only true beauty. And that idea has just not gone away.
And I haven't read that book. Is that a movement? Well, let's call it movement, whatever. That has then started in the U.S. or
it started in the U.S. as well as in England and France. Yeah, so it was colonial U.S. In the 1800s. Not the colonial U.S. That's the USA, but around the time of Revolutionary War. And afterward, we have freed the slaves. And so what do we think? Black people are equal to us? No, that can't be. We need to make sure that we still have them under control. And that's why we see around 50 years later, turn of the 20th century, that we see that thinness becomes so widespread. So, yeah, and it didn't take over all at the same time. You see magazines in the early 1900s in the northeast part of the U.S., for example, showing articles about how to lose weight and showing more pictures or drawings of women who were very thin. And in the south, the southeast part of the U.S. at the time, they're still showing advertisements on how to stay round and curvy and beautiful. And so it's like it hadn't even caught up to the South at that time. So we see that it's a really new thing, this obsession with thinness. Before that, it's not something that is widespread throughout Western culture at all.
Yeah, I mean, you also have Rubens, the Dutch painter, who used to portray women who have curvy women. That has just gone again. But maybe it's coming back. I don't know. I have to say, like, it's unpredictable.
It's very unpredictable.
Unpredictable, yeah. Because as you said, now we're moving towards smaller breasts. Do those beauty ideals, like the male and the female, do they influence each other, or is it, as you just tried to explain with the history in the US, is it decided? So I have to say I'm quite confused as to where it is moving nowadays.
What do you mean to say, like, why are the beauty standards the way they are right now?
Yeah, I mean the causes for it, the reasons.
Yeah,
like
I'm not clear on that. I'm not clear on why, other than this racist idea of white bodies being better than black bodies, or bodies of Latin descent or Asian descent, et cetera, I don't know why, for example, now wide hips and big butts are in. And I can't really predict that. I wonder if it has to do with the rise of popularity of non-white celebrities, Cardi B, Beyonce, people who have not the traditional white body that we've worshipped for so long. It could be that it's the influence of that. But why have they been able to be successful if we lived in a society where you have to meet the beauty ideal in a strict way to be a pop star? So chicken or egg, I'm not really sure how that works.
All right. So it's unpredictable to know where it comes from.
Absolutely. It's difficult
where
because it's Western culture also now has become like a global culture where we're, in terms of beauty standards, we're getting more and more international. Very interesting how, for example, Korean beauty products have become so successful, and now the idea of to have a skin that's more similar to folks who live in Korea has become trendy. Those beauty products center around a lot of moisturizing and skin that will have a dewy and glowy effect that's not so dry looking but very moist. And how interesting it is to see that for maybe the first time in global history that a lot of white people want to look like Asian people. But not all Asian people, of course, only certain ones and only in a certain way. Also in Korea, we see a high prevalence of eye surgeries that create the double eyelid. And other parts of Asia, it's not very popular, but in Korea, it's quite popular to have this surgery, and they want to look more white. So that's really sad to me.
The whole topic of surgery is... we could easily extend this talk towards that exclusively, because there's even surgeries for the genitals.
Yes.
Which is not even something that you see at first glance. So this awareness of how will people perceive me, how will people probably judge me, even goes to your genitals.
And how do I make my body acceptable? Right. And why is it that we so much more often see these kinds of surgeries with women? Of course, yeah, like to do a circumcision on a boy. This is a long-standing tradition, but my impression is, of course, it's stood the test of time because of religion, but also because of hygiene. That was thought for so long that you would have more chance of infection and maybe dying if you didn't circumcise your son's penis. We don't see that because of any other sorts of it's not about beauty, and it's also not about being acceptable in your gender, whereas in some countries in Africa, for example, women's clitorises are cut, and this is about limiting pleasure. So that's about control. And what I did also want to bring up is it's not an accident that women are the ones who are controlled by beauty and constantly being told to change their bodies and to focus their time, attention, money, and spirits and hearts into this subject. It's on purpose. It's not one person who created this, but it's not an accident. Patriarchy sets the stage for men having more time and energy and resources to actually do stuff that fulfills them, and move on with their lives and feel confident and feel satisfied with themselves. And it sets the stage for women to constantly be not enough. That's what it means to live in patriarchy, is that women have to always play catch up and always do double the work, and that includes beauty, and it includes many other kinds of things in life.
That could even allow for the conclusion that those changing ideals might be due to patriarchy being like, we've had enough of that, let's change it.
Correct. So just when you think you've achieved the beauty ideal, it's going to change again anyway. Yeah. So think of women who had breast implants in the 90s who are now like, what the fuck? Big boobs are out? Are you kidding me? Yeah. Like I did everything. I did everything to worship this beauty ideal and to achieve it. And the other thing, of course, is that age becomes the ultimate beauty killer, according to sort of the standardized beauty ideal, that you can only be beautiful when you're young. And that's also absurd. And so no matter how hard you work to become beautiful, you can't even stay beautiful for long. So even if you achieve this respect and love and attention through beauty, you don't get to hold on to it. What a fucking joke.
So let's move on to a more practical question. So feeling sexy. Yeah. Is that something that you choose actively, or is that something that comes passively when the surrounding is beneficial?
That's a great question. I think every person's sense of sexuality within themselves is really different. And so some people might feel sexy very little in their lives or never. And some people might go around feeling sexed up and feeling great and sexual and sexy all the time. And I'm happy for those people. That sounds really fun. For me, it's a combination of active choices and just a whim. Some days you wake up in the morning, or I would say specifically me, some days I wake up in the morning and I think, damn, that's a nice piece of ass, I mean, I feel really pleased with myself and able to own my sexual self and happy to flaunt it. And why is that? Some days I feel that there's no rhyme or reason necessarily. Sometimes it's to do with the sunshine. Sometimes it's to do with anticipating a fun event. If I know I'm going to go out and go dancing with friends or go to a fun party, then I might feel a lot of fun anticipation about celebrating or putting myself out there as a beautiful person and getting attention for that. That might make me feel sexy. But there are other things that I have done and continue to do to make sure that I am feeling sexy. And part of those things are having a healthy relationship with myself and respecting myself and doing what I need to do to stay mentally healthy and happy. So my general strategies would be doing enough exercise that makes me feel good. So not exercise to punish myself and not exercise to try to get thinner the way I did when I was younger, but exercise to feel great in my body, to be more embodied and to feel like I'm inside my body right now. And I feel connected to myself. That's one way that I can contribute to sometimes an overall more sexy feeling.
So could I rephrase that into less rejection of your body and more acceptance?
Yeah, it's acceptance, but it's also just a physical feeling of I'm here and I'm in it. I'm not in my head. I'm not, of course, because what I do as a teacher and also teaching online right now and just in general in life, there's a lot of things that involve only my brain and my fingertips typing and my eyes and speaking and a lot of cerebral activity, and too much of that kind of mode can take me away from the feeling of awareness of my body. Not even before the acceptance of the body and the satisfaction with the body becomes I'm in my body and I'm not scared of that. I'm not scared to just sit inside my body and be here and see it and feel it and maybe just touch it with my own hands, resting my hands on my own thighs while I meditate, for example. It puts me inside my own body in a way that can be easy to forget to stay there as we do really mentally active or engaging things like talking and looking at social media and stuff like that.
How is the connection between feeling sexy or even being able to feel sexy,
Mm-hmm.
and those beneficial effects that you have described about, for example, Instagram.
Yeah. So for me, it's been really interesting to see how, let's say I'm choosing an outfit. I might now be able to go more outside the box with a fashion choice, because I feel not only are different bodies beautiful, but also different kinds of clothes are beautiful, because I don't only see clothes as a means of making me look thinner and more quote unquote attractive in the beauty standard, but that clothes are an adornment of the body I have now, and that there's no wrong way. There's only what I like. It's cool if other people like it too, but I'm kind of pleasing myself first with my clothing choices. So when I get dressed, I might feel really sexy putting on something very unexpected, wearing a dress that has stripes that are horizontal, that technically will make the eye imagine that a person might be wider. That's something I avoided my entire life, because I thought, oh, I'm fat, so you can't wear horizontal stripes because it'll make you look fat. But imagine putting on stripes, looking at yourself and thinking, that's fun. I like that. I like the wideness that it creates on my body. I like the visual look. I'm into it. And then the exhilaration of owning the pleasure of your own look without serving someone else or serving some impossible ideal you can never achieve anyway. It is such a rush. It is a fucking drug. It is so fun.
And to me, what you're explaining right now is something that I personally very much appreciate. And about this topic, beauty ideals and pressure, especially in women, I have talked to about this with my friends and just discussed this issue. And my friends and I, we agree that a woman who's really self-confident and owning her body and her fashion, what you just described, that contributes a lot to how attractive she is. So that is, by the way, something that makes you very attractive, because you, to me, at least in my perception, you're very self-confident. And that, as a conclusion, has those two, well, not only two, but for example, two types of women, like women who look like the beauty ideal, but they might not be aware of it. Therefore, they don't show the self-confidence. And those who do not belong to the category of tiny box beauty ideal, but they don't give a fuck. And they're like, this is who I am, deal with it, and that is attractive.
Yeah. You could group women into those two groups, but I think there are a lot of people who don't fall into either. And they may be a different mix. I would say, unfortunately, there's a lot of women who don't fall into the beauty ideal and are very pained by it and very hurt by it, and are not confident about themselves. And that was definitely how I would have characterized myself maybe 10 to 15 years ago, when I was a late teenager and early 20s. I think I was a confident person, and I spoke confidently, and I moved into a room with a lot of energy and excitement, and I was socially confident, and I was musically confident as a singer. I was scholastically confident as a student, but I was not physically confident as a person in my own body, and that has changed. And that's an amazing transformation, actually, when I look back and I think about how it used to feel to look in the mirror, or how it used to feel to get dressed, or to go shopping for clothes and find that things don't fit. That's still annoying as hell, but it's a different experience, because I recognize in a clothing store where none of the clothes fit me, I say, fuck these clothes, they don't fit me. There's something wrong with the clothes, not with me.
Yeah.
So also, the same feeling with, if there's a chair that has really narrow arms and it's kind of cutting into my hips, and I think, this chair sucks. It's not big enough for me. This chair's wrong. I'm not wrong. So that's changed as well. Anyway, but I would say, going back to what you mentioned about women, I would call it more of a spectrum, where there's a physical outside, which may or may not fit into the beauty ideal, and then the confidence and self-love that some women, or just at least self-acceptance, being at least neutral about your body and saying, yeah, okay, I have a body. It's a body. It digests for me. It moves me around. It carries me. It's okay. Even if I don't love it every day, I'm all right with it. There's a huge spectrum of how we feel about our bodies as women and people of other genders as well.
So you've just described your change of perspective that has taken place in the last couple of years, I guess. And again, that linked to the question of how to feel sexy, how to be able to feel sexy. What would you recommend to a potential listener who is really interested in this topic and might want to change their perspective?
That's a great question. I highly recommend taking my strategy of curating your Instagram to open your mind about beauty, because it can be really difficult to attack the front of your own beauty first. I think we're our own harshest critics, but if you can start to see the beauty in someone who looks similar to you and heal that, then you might find it easier to then extend that same kindness and affection and appreciation to yourself. And that could take time. My other idea would be to just give yourself a lot of time to think it through, and don't rush yourself. If you're starting on a journey of self-acceptance and a year from now you don't feel that you've made a whole bunch of progress, then just remember that the whole culture has just been fighting you your whole life. And so if you move slowly with it, you're going to get somewhere. Don't put pressure on yourself. And if you're not loving your body every single day, you're not doing it wrong. There's a lot of reasons why we don't feel like that we can accept our bodies, and that programming can be very slow to undo. And it's still slow for me. There are still some days I feel ashamed of my body. There are days I don't feel comfortable with who I am, but it gets better overall. So the trajectory is definitely in the right direction for me. I would also say anything that you can do to connect to your body that's not about changing it. So spending time doing any kind of sports or dance or movement, or just rolling around on the floor stretching, where you're not trying to make your body a different product or have a different result at the end, but that you just are connecting back to yourself. Moving your body can be a really healing way to do that. And I recommend for any people who have had any struggles with diet or trying to lose weight in their life, and they find that they're frustrated and they don't think it works, that you can take a look at intuitive eating as a concept and a sort of a method to step away from diet culture. That's something that there's a ton of information on the internet. Amazing experts. I love Christy Harrison. She has a podcast. That's how I got started. I listened to her podcast.
So could you briefly describe it?
Yeah. Intuitive eating is the idea that we can break free from diet culture, which is the idea that people who are in larger bodies all should lose weight. And diet culture also comes in the form of athletic activity. So you could be eating everything you want, but doing an insane amount of sports to stay thin. That's still a diet. So that's something I've stepped away from, dieting in general. And the strategies of intuitive eating, there are several steps, and I don't know if I could list them by memory, but basically it's the idea that you can eat however much you want, whenever you want. There are no rules. Your body is an intuitive being that has wisdom around feeding itself. And if you think of children, you can try to feed a baby some vegetables, and if it doesn't like it, it's just going to spit it out. And when it's hungry, it's going to go for it. And it's going to go for foods that it likes and not go for foods that it doesn't like. And when it's full, it just says, meh, I'm not interested. And look, babies do fine. They grow the fat that they need to get strong. And then they grow up into little kids who grow up into adults, and they're all fine. So there's no wrong way to feed yourself, and you can trust yourself to do it.
So what about, I will ask this provocatively, what if I choose to only eat chocolate bars because I fucking love it?
Yeah, so you can trust your body that if you really love chocolate bars, you can just eat as many chocolate bars as you want. And what happens to most people is that when you really give yourself permission to eat the chocolate bars, it's also a psychological process of saying, yeah, I really get to eat as many chocolate bars as I want. And this is a really insane phase of intuitive eating. At least it was for me. Like the foods that I had not let myself eat for so long, once they were allowed, I was going nuts on like McDonald's and Snickers bars and like just crazy shit that I always thought like, well, you shouldn't have that. That's totally off limits because I'm a healthy person, and once you actually just decide that food has no moral values, it's not good or bad, it's just food, it's all nutrients. Even what people would consider junk food has calories. You can live on that shit. It's okay. And then your body, after a while, starts to go, what sounds good? Salad, actually. And it's so weird to actually crave salad. When I was dieting, I never craved salad because I was always eating so much salad that I had to eat. And I was so sick of it and so resentful. And now I get these like very interesting cravings for whatever, spinach or squash or carrots or something crunchy, and then I just go find it and then I eat it. So for anyone who's afraid that they'll just eat chocolate bars all day every day for like 5 years, like it's pretty unlikely, but just give yourself permission to really explore what it feels like to eat a lot of chocolate bars. And the worst thing that can happen is you get a stomachache. We've all been there. A stomachache is not the end of the world. You might be like, ugh, I feel gross now for a couple of hours, and the shame that piles onto that is much worse than the actual physical feeling. So just eat chocolate bars if you want.
So you're saying diets are a product of fat shaming culture?
Correct.
And diets lead to a distorted perception of what food actually means?
Mm-hmm. And also a distortion of the hunger cues. So a lot of people, for me in particular, I didn't know anymore if I was hungry or if I was full, and I didn't know what I really wanted to eat.
Mm-hmm. And so even... that silly question, even if you were to eat a lot of chocolate bars, so go to McDonald's.
Not a silly question, by the way. Not at all. It's a big question I had before I started intuitive eating. I thought, well, that's crazy that I'm just gonna, I know myself, I'm gonna go get a huge bag of like mini Twix and just live on it. Like that's just not good for you.
So you were saying, or your experience with intuitive eating was that choosing a very uncommon way will lead you to a healthy connection to food.
Sure.
Which translates into, I also like salad, I also like vegetables, without them being imposed on me.
And the method is trust your body to choose, and trust your appetite and trust your own desires. Because when you reach a point where your body finally understands that there's no more diets coming and there's no more limitations, because it's, of course, once you've been dieting for a long time, your body thinks that you've gone through multiple famines and it's holding on to weight just in case another famine comes. And it's cueing you to eat more and more of rich foods, satisfying, fatty and sugary and just foods that make you feel full. It's cueing you to eat more of those foods when they're available because it thinks there's still another famine coming. So it's a psychological process also of communicating to your body that there is no more famine and that there are always going to be these delicious foods available. And I'm starting to notice that I can really... it used to be I could not keep my chill around a pan of brownies. I would look at a pan of brownies and I would get nervous because I knew once I started I couldn't stop. And now I can look at a pan of brownies and be like, oh, it looks so good. And I feel happy and I eat one. And then if I'm hungry for another one, I can eat another one. But if I'm not hungry for it, I don't have this like, despite my lack of hunger, I don't go for another one. Like it used to be, didn't matter what my stomach was saying, my brain would just take over and I would just eat way too many. And now I feel like I can just eat one and I look at it and I think, yeah, it'll be there tomorrow, or I'll give the rest of these brownies away and make more brownies. There's always another treat for me. So that was like, it seems so dumb in some ways, like because I think some people have lived their whole lives with that knowledge that there's always a treat if they want to have a treat. For me, there was always the fear that a diet starts tomorrow and there won't be this like nice food. I just really love food too. I honestly think diets made me love food more, which is so messed up. I think like depriving myself of like the really, really delicious foods that I really wanted made me want them more and be more obsessed with them and think about food more and think about nutrition more. It's such a weird result that like it's a hobby of mine also to cook and to talk about food and like watch food shows. And I just think that some of that is an influence of like me having done diets. But I wish I had never done diets instead. I wish food was more boring to me.
Interesting, because I think the way you describe diets seems sad, but the outcome that you're very aware of food doesn't seem sad to me.
No, it's not sad. So that's like a strange good thing. But also it came from a bad experience that I mourn for myself. I mourn for my younger self eating either not enough brownies or too many brownies.
So coming back to that, recommendations for anybody
Yeah.
who wants to heal.
Right.
So you're saying heal your body by healing your psyche.
And by connecting your psyche to your body through movement. Moving with joy and moving in a way that feels good to you can be a very therapeutic process. It's something that sometimes can't be put into words, but the feeling of moving your body with joy can make you feel more gratitude and connectedness to the body that you're in today, and that can lead towards more acceptance of the body you have.
Also, you mentioned online resources or social media. What about the offline world? So you're trying to heal your psyche in order to heal your body and your whole awareness of being human. What about your people around you? Maybe your family, your friends, doing like fat shaming, like it's not alright the way you are. So it's a tough one, but would you have any recommendations, or have you read anything about that? Any experiences? That's tough. I mean,
so tough.
If your close ones explicitly or implicitly criticize you for being the way you are,
what do you do about it?
Yeah.
I think that it's really individual how people handle personal relationships where they are facing stigma or shame, or even just people. I've had a hard time, for example, in my life of having friends who tell me every time it comes up about my weight, for example, that I'm beautiful, I don't need to change, but they themselves are demonstrating that they would like to lose weight, they're unsatisfied with their bodies, and that their greatest fear is to be fat, like me. So the implication is, my greatest fear is to be you, and yet, no, but you're beautiful. So that can be a really poisoning aspect in some friendships. The friends I had in some past years who acted in an extreme way in that behavior, I don't see as much anymore. So I had a big change in my life, moving to Germany, started over with new friends. In my family, there are some people who definitely still do diets and are definitely focused on cutting out a lot of foods in an unhealthy way to like create health, but like under that is also like, and stay thin. And there are people who explicitly say, I want to stay thin or get thinner. And I just find that for me, I love my family and I don't want to cut ties with any of them. It's not that bad in my experience. So I just either don't say anything, or I say, well, I'm trying something where I just eat what I want when I want, and it feels really great. I'm really happy with it. And then I just leave it at that. I don't get super into it with family because I find the relationship itself is more important to me. But if somebody who's listening is facing shame directly from their family, then I think it's a good idea to bring it up and have that tough conversation and say, first of all, how you feel. So naming your feelings around the situation. I feel angry, I feel sad, I feel embarrassed, whatever. And then also to say what your requests are. So one easy way to say is, how about let's not talk about weight or bodies when we're together? Can we just talk about something else? Can we just have a no-go on that topic? That can be helpful to just get some space from someone who doesn't really get what you're talking about. And that may not work. Families don't always like to change quickly. Friends don't always understand. Not everybody understands. And I know that for some people, it's the best thing to sometimes let a friendship go. If there's somebody who's really holding you down, if any friend is explicitly shaming you, dump that friend, like 100% today. Like, it's not acceptable, and there are plenty of people in the world to be friends with. Family's another situation, depending on how close that family member is and how much you value that relationship outside of this topic. You can try to heal this conversation and get closer to more understanding for what you need, or you can distance yourself a little bit if you think that person is really harming you. That's something that every person has to figure out. But in my life, I haven't had to end any friendships around this topic, and I have made some friends who have lifted me up and changed me in so many wonderful ways. Friends who have just lived their life as a person in a non-traditional, beautiful body, non-traditionally beautiful is what I mean, with confidence, and that has given me the confidence. Watching them live their way makes me think, yeah, me too, I can do it. And I also think I've been that person for some other people. So we're all lifting each other up. The online world is important for me because it connects me to a lot of therapists and specific information and a lot of images that I wouldn't usually see. But the real world is where the juice is happening, where people are truly communicating with each other and accepting each other and loving each other, or the opposite. So.
And talking about the real world, do you see, to conclude on this, the public opinion changing? Is it obvious? Is it a public thing that that these concerns are being considered?
Yes, I think it's coming up, especially in the US right now. The movement of fat acceptance is gaining traction. The books that are being written about this are getting more and more widespread. We have Lizzo, who is a fat pop star and is like an incredible musician, incredible singer and dancer, just a wonderful spirit, and directly talking about body acceptance, about her fat body, and about how sexy she feels. And that is a huge, I mean, we were not ready for that 5 years ago. So the fact that Lizzo is now successful is a great sign to me that we have, and also a Black woman, that on top of it, right? That not only is it's not a fat white woman, which, for example, we've had Adele, and we've had some other stars who are singers, but Lizzo showing her body in all of its Black, beautiful, fat glory. She's just incredible. I'm obsessed. So the fact that she exists, and just in the media in general, I'm seeing slightly a creeping conversation going towards, diets actually don't work. Therefore, when fat people are fat, you can't say you should do a diet because that doesn't work. People gain weight back. That's what the studies are showing. People don't keep weight off 95% of the time. If they found a way for us all to lose weight and it was easy and healthy and cool, then I guess that's fine. But I would rather live in a world where we can just accept a diversity of bodies, which have always existed. There have always been fat people. There have always been disabled people. There have always been people with scars and skin conditions and difference. There's always been difference. So why are we trying to erase that? Why wouldn't we just like it?
I think this is a great conclusion.
I love it.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Madeline.
Thank you for your great questions, Rudy. This is really fun to talk about.
Yeah. See you in another episode, I guess.
See you then.
Bye-bye.
Ciao.